Hello, welcome to Tricky Conversations Unfiltered. My name is Liz Walker and this is Jenny Hoey.
Hello.
We are so glad that you're here again tonight, people are just jumping on now, so that's great. Tonight we've got a really jam-packed session for you because, you know, when we first started Porn Resilient Kids, so Porn Resilient Kids is an initiative of Youth Wellbeing Project. And when I first started that, Porn Resilient Kids was all around my children's books, Millie's Message and Hamish and the Shadow Secret, and really honing in on pornography. Jenny had a parent group and we joined forces. The parent group, if you haven't yet discovered it, it's called Not for Kids, and it's attached to – oh, sorry, Not My Kid. Not My Kid, attached to the Porn Resilient Kids Facebook page. So if you're a parent and you want a little bit of extra support and opportunity to chat, please jump into the Not My Kid Facebook group. Now, you can't talk about pornography without also talking about predators, because really when it comes to online safety, the two go very much, I want to say hand in hand, but perhaps that's the wrong terminology for that topic. But then, of course, the ways that kids access devices or access that content is what we're going to dive into tonight. And since we started and really dove into Not My Kid, we've had to really think about what approach we're taking. And, I mean, Jenny, you have listened to so many different cyber experts and really dove into all the sorts of different messaging and you know, tell us what your what you've unpacked along the way, what you've I don't want you to name names, but obviously there's approaches that we've had to kind of filter through and go, well, you know, this cyber safety expert's saying this and this one's saying that. And we've had to look at the research and what's actually happening with our kids to end up with what we're at now.
Yeah, I guess it's, I certainly don't want to criticize anyone in this space because everybody's doing their very best to educate parents and everybody has the same goal, which is to keep children safe. But as a parent listening, I feel like a lot of the messages are a little diluted. And so I've had to really assess, as you said, what I feel is the best way forward. And this is taking into account my own experience as a parent and looking at my own children and their experiences and how they are able to self-regulate. So I don't believe children can do what we're asking of them online. And I should reiterate, I'm not against the internet and I'm not against screens, but I really do firmly believe that social media and gaming need to be put off for as long as possible. And that means handing over a smartphone. I think my poor son is probably going to be maybe the only one who will not have a smartphone in his early teens. I just really feel like their brains are developing. They don't have the capacity to be able to do what we're asking in terms of self-regulating their use and also what they access and what their peers are accessing.
Yeah. And, you know, I was part of the parent generation who was among the first. You know, I've got a 23-year-old, a 21-year-old and a 19-year-old. And, you know, they were really among the first that ended up with these powerful devices at way too young an age. And I said to my eldest the other day, how different would have your life been had I not given you a smartphone at the age of 13? She said, oh, Mum, totally different. You know, she suspects that she wouldn't have taken pictures that she shouldn't have. She suspects that she wouldn't have chatted to randoms and ended up in all sorts of different conversations that she shouldn't have had. She suspects that she wouldn't have gone down a pathway of self-harming. Like there's all sorts of different behavioral reactions to online use, that when we're giving a kid a powerful device at the age of 13, that they're just not ready in the brain to process what's going on. And then, Jenny, you've dug up some statistics from the Australian Centre to Counter Child Exploitation on the ages that kids are accessing devices. What have you got that there?
I've got that here. So this is from February this year, their report. I guess what astounded me was between 8 and 11-year-old, 98% are online. 81% have their most popular device of choice is an iPad. 71 of those have their very own one, and only 40% or 40% they say have no supervision whatsoever. That figure jumps significantly in teens, but it also does touch on children as young as 4 to 7 years old. And their report was all around, obviously, the dangers online, specifically child exploitation, sextortion, and predators. That doesn't even touch sides when it comes to the mental health issues that our children are seeing today. A different report I read from February said that in the United States, 80% of teens have a phone by the age of 11. So that number has increased by 20% in the last 4 years. But in fact, the suicide rate in the last 10 years, or even being admitted for, this is hospital admissions for either suicide ideation or attempts or completed suicide, has doubled, which is very confronting.
It's massively confronting. And I mean, I've got a graph here that I'm going to put up. It was from a post that I put up on the Porn Resilient Kids page the other day. Now, this is showing, this is actually from Jean Twenge. Now, she's a researcher, and this was her post that we put up. Just out, depression among US teen girls doubled from 2009 to 2019 and was up 74% among teen boys, according to just released data from the government's administered National Survey of Drug Use and Health. What does this mean? Now, obviously, this is US statistics, but wherever there are devices, same over. Adolescents aged 12 to 17 using clinical criteria for major depressive episode in the last year. Twice as many teen girls in 2019 versus 2009 have clinical level depression. Why? The 2019 data makes it clear that the rise in teen depression is not due to the Great Recession. In fact, it's exactly the opposite of what you'd expect if teen depression were caused by economic struggles. As depression rose 2009 to 2019, the US economy was steadily improving. So it's got nothing to do with economics. Is the rising depression due to academic pressures? One measure of academic pressure is homework time, which has not changed consistently over this time period. It's actually gone down among 8th graders between 2009 to 2018. So what did change in teens' lives over this time period when depression increased so much? In 2009, only about half used social media every day. Now about 85% do. In 2009, most did not own a smartphone. Now about 95% do. It's not just that the two trends happened at the same time. It's that the rise of smartphones and social media had an enormous impact on day-to-day life for teens. She said, we can't randomly assign people to be born at different times, so we can't prove causation, but we have to go on the data we have. And the rise of smartphones and social media has the biggest impact on the most teens and is thus the most likely to impact mental health. Are there other possible causes? Sure, but it's tough to think of anything else that has changed consistently over this time period that has had as big an impact on so many people, no matter what the cause. We need more resources for teen mental health. This can't continue. Now, I want to add to that, it's porn, it's hypersexualization. We know that has a massive impact on young people's body image, perception, relationships. And we can do more than just provide resources for teens' mental health. We can take a solid look at what we're doing with giving our kids smartphones.
Absolutely. I would really urge anyone watching to watch Childhood 2.0. It is really quite eye-opening in the sense that they do interview teens. And one of the questions they asked was, of a group of teens, was, well, there were two questions I would like to mention. One was, what is the most amount of time you spent on your phone in the last 3 years? Now, the highest number, one that stuck in my mind, was 18 hours, and that is outside of school and homework. And every single teen, when they were asked about mental health, said that they had suffered from depression or anxiety. So it's... and I should add that I don't really, from my perspective, I work in a psychiatric practice. I manage my husband's practice, and it would be hard to ignore the steady rise in teenage mental health issues. The majority of calls I'm getting now for new appointments are parents calling for their teenage children. So...
Yeah. And so what we have to do is not only take a solid look at what we're doing to our kids and the risks that we're putting in front of them. Sure, we're not going to leave you hanging. We are going to give you a really clear guideline that we've developed in order to raise your kids up so that they're tech savvy, but in a way that does it our best to mitigate those risks. But what we have to do is look at the brain research. So I'm just going to play a short video of an expert in this space who unpacks what the research says about the brain.
My name's Frances Jensen, and I work at the University of Pennsylvania as the chair of neurology at the Perelman School of Medicine. The teenage brain is different from the adult brain in several ways, but two major patterns come out. First of all, because children and teenagers are actually wired to learn faster than adults, their synapses, where the brain cells talk to one another, are actually at higher numbers in childhood and adolescence. So teenagers actually have more synapses than adults. They also have more of the ability to learn, to strengthen those synapses than adults. We call that synaptic plasticity, how brain cells respond to they can be molded by the environment. That actually increased excitability of their brains is a very good thing. The second way the teenage brain is very different is that the way our brain areas are hooked up to one another, the major brain regions, is a process that takes 2.5 decades of our lives to actually occur. The brain is the last organ in the body to mature, and therefore it takes until your mid to late 20s to finish. And that property that takes a very long time, one of the major properties is the way we connect brain regions up to one another. So it's called myelination, and it starts in the back of your brain and moves forward. So the last place to connect is the frontal lobe. Frontal lobe is important for judgment, impulse control, decision making, and empathy. So when we think of teenagers, one of the problems they have is that they're not really accessing their frontal lobe as fast as they could. Teen brains are very impressionable to good things, but also to bad things. And one of the important things that I think teenagers need to know about themselves is this hidden strength is a bit of a double-edged sword in that addiction is a form of synaptic plasticity too. Instead of learning a good thing, your brain is actually learning a bad thing, which is substance abuse, and one gets the same strengthening of the wrong synapses robustly, more than in the adults. So actually teenagers can get addicted harder, stronger, longer, faster than the adult. You couple that with the fact they're risk takers, they're actually potentially putting themselves in harm's way more. But it's not just the process of getting addicted. Actually, some of these substances prevent the normal process, the good things happening in your brain, and can change the way your brain develops. people who are addicted early have a much harder time undoing that addiction later in life. There are other things, though, like stress that can affect your brain in the adolescent years and can have long-term effects on later adult development, such as increasing the risk of depression. I find when we explain some of the new research on the teenage brain to parents and teachers, there's a sense of, so that's why they did it. Oh, now I get it.
Okay, that's really helpful. And it's the missing piece we feel in the conversation around smartphone use, around screen time, around what's going on with these massively high rates of depression.
Yeah, I agree. And I mean, the other thing that also concerns me is, and in Jean Twench, I read an article of hers today, the other thing she comments on is that she's noticing in her research, and what I read was it was a research that had questioned over 40,000 teenagers, which is, I think that's pretty substantial. And she noticed that they were having more difficulty finishing tasks, but more importantly for me, their curiosity had decreased significantly. And that's what I'm wanting to hold on to for my son of 7, is his curiosity. So, if there's one thing, obviously the mental health is really significant, but for me, as a small child, so we're not talking about a teenager, as a young child, that curiosity and imagination is, for me, one of the most important parts of childhood.
Yeah. And, that ability to, to creatively think, to be bored and to do something with that boredom,
Right.
to dream up what can happen with Lego or what to, and they just need that time to be kids. It's hugely concerning to me that I'm pretty sure I put it in a book chapter that I've just contributed to recently, and I don't have the stat off the top of my head, but I think it's somewhere around 80% of kids who are 4 years old use the internet.
Yeah, that was in the ACE report as well. 87%.
That was
sitting right here. Yeah.
Wow. That's massive. And so, at what age are you ready for your kids to see a whole lot of stuff that they're unable to process? At what age are you ready for them to lose their ability to think creatively and to entertain themselves and to, just have fun? And at what age do you really want to deal with a tantrum we know of teenagers who have tantrums because they can't have their smartphone, or just the thought of having to detox sends them into absolute meltdown. Is that what we want for our kids?
That's right. And being confronted with material, and obviously in our home, there's a lot of talk around pornography. I want my child to have a sense of what healthy sex is. I've said that before. But one thing that struck me, and I mentioned this to you, Liz, was earlier this year when he went into, I won't say the name of the shop, to buy my husband was buying a television, and on the screens that my husband was looking at, it was, I think, just National Geographic, but there were some other screens that were showing, it must have been an MA 15 plus violent film. And when I came into the shop, because I arrived after them, I could see my son standing and staring at the screen. And I could see he was terrified. And I had to kind of coax him away and say, you're really scared right now. Mummy is going to take you out the shop. I did speak to the manager before leaving. But there were two things that struck me. First of all, was that he actually couldn't pull himself away. He was staring at it. The effect that had on him was that for 3 months, he was toddling into our room every single night, scared. So he was 6 at the time. And that has really stuck in my mind, because one of the things I really want to avoid is him being confronted with frightening, confusing material, possibly staring at it and being really afraid. And I can prevent that.
Mm.
I
Yeah.
can prevent that.
Exactly. And I mean, you know, you've had all those conversations with your son about, you know, if you see something that's scary or makes you feel uncomfortable, look away. But what happened with him? He froze.
He froze. That's right.
And that's a normal reaction. That is a, you know, it's fight, flight, or freeze. That's
Exactly.
a normal reaction. And, you know, if they're online and watching content that they, you know, that they're not being supervised with, what is that doing to their little psyche and their ability to process that? So I promised you that we wouldn't just, you know, say no, 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 and, you know, and we're not anti-tech, and we're not anti-kids learning how to use the internet in a safe and fun way. But we are all about a measured and balanced approach. So we've put it together. I'm just going to pop up. There's 3 screens here that I will give you the links to in a minute. We'll add it in so that you can find this resource on our website. But this first one here, one of these devices is not like the other, and that's the smartphone. So there's many types of devices. Consider the age to provide screen access based on if the device is monitorable, manageable, portable, and internet connected. Predator prevention experts, which is the Australian Centre to Counter Child Exploitation, recommend that under age 12 children's internet use should always be supervised. So, you know, we can give kids access to a TV, for instance, or a home computer where somebody's nearby with limited internet access or measured and manageable access to content. They're still getting their skills up, but it's not putting it in their back pocket, not taking it into their bedroom, just really helping them with those guidance. And then consider the ages that kids are developmentally able to process harmful content, navigate fight, flight, freeze responses, regulate use and manage risks, respect when and where boundaries, seek help, and apply critical thinking skills to differentiate between sex and porn. So the question is, you know, what age are you ready to have that conversation with your kids about sex and porn so that they're ready when they do see it? Because the more access they have online, the more likely they will see that content. And one of the things when we're talking about the brain development, it's really interesting to know that teenagers who are getting addicted to porn now take longer to recover than an adult male who has grown up without a smartphone, without constant internet access. If they are struggling with compulsive sexual behavior, porn viewing, they can rewire their brain back to, you know, a healthy state and stop obsessively watching porn much, much quicker than a teenage brain can. So the brain is neuroplastic. That's great news. But do we want to put them in that position in the first place? And the same with device use.
That's right. And I think that one thing we should touch on is the fact that some of the material they'll come across will be sexually arousing. So, and they are children, they are sexual human beings, and they will be. And that will, more likely than not, take them back to it. And I think that predators take advantage of our porn-saturated culture, and we must also not forget that they are very cunning and they will threaten the child into silence. And there are some children who come forward and who are brave, and there's some who remain very afraid. And sometimes I wonder what's going on behind the mental illness. What is actually the root cause? Because I think unprotected devices do have to be taken into account.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so then we've got the next, let me find here again. Sorry, I've got my screens open everywhere. The next bit of advice that we put together on this infographic for you, Consider how time spent on screens interacts and is balanced with connections with family and friends, imagination, learning, health, sport, and outdoor play. So a kid could be on a device and interacting with friends or speaking to, relatives or, chatting with friends about homework. That's not the same as spending hours and hours on social media. But how is that time balanced then with all the other important things in life that help wire their neural pathways in a way that's a really, really healthy? And then consider the context of screen use and the values it promotes. Is it relational, educational, inspiring personal interests, or is it normalizing or promoting harmful messages? So the context and, the time, it's not so much the time spent on devices, it's what they're doing with that time.
Yes, that's right. And that's where we want to appeal to parents. If more and more of us had the approach of delay, the better chance they'd have. I mean, during COVID, for example, my daughter does not have, she got an Instagram account at 15, but I wanted to observe what she did with her time, because there was so much talk about, just relaxing back and maybe I even heard some people talk about letting children go on social media at a younger age. But she was if she was with friends, she was just FaceTiming, and she would talk for ages. She'd do her homework, they'd be FaceTiming. But she's also a dancer, so she was doing a lot of online dancing. So I guess I'm just saying they don't have to have all the social media and they can still socialize.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so then our third one here we've got is be critical of the recommended age of 13, because, I mean, how many times have you heard your 11-year-old say, but I'm nearly 13, can't I just have this app, this device, whatever? That age of 13 relates to data laws. It's actually got nothing to do with the emotional, mental, social, relational, and sexual wellbeing and safety of your child. So consider delaying access to apps with poor safety features and extreme themes till 16 or even 18. We've got parents coming to us freaked out that their kid's on Omegle or Discord or other apps and chat, even Snapchat, for goodness sake. The themes and Instagram, the themes that they can get on these apps are so extreme. And at what age are you ready for your and that's the next question. What age is my child ready to have a smartphone with open internet access? Well, the question comes back to parents. At what age are you ready for your child to access extreme themed porn or navigate hypersexualized images, sexting and image-based abuse, or deal with cyberbullying, violence and content they yet have the developmental capacity to manage? These are really important questions that we've got to ask ourselves as we're giving our kids access in a balanced and measured way. We can try and mitigate these risks, but the moment that we give our kids unfettered access to a smartphone, when they walk out the door and they have access to the world in their pocket, no parent can monitor that. And, open and honest conversations, great. But if the rates of depression are skyrocketing, and if academic ability is plunging and creative imagination is walking right out the door, we've got to ask, what do we need to do differently?
Yes, I couldn't agree more. I mentioned to you before we started a common sense media census that said that in the survey they did, nearly 1/3 of teenagers said that they read once or less a month, if ever. So, and that's that's just shocking, really. But I think that one of the platforms that really worries me for younger kids, as you know, is YouTube. And in the work I've done with you, YouTube is saturated with pornography. So even if your child doesn't have a smartphone, but you've given them an iPad to go and sit wherever to watch their little movies or their little clips, pornography is everywhere. I found it in 10 seconds flat on YouTube. And that worries me because of the number of children who are accessing YouTube. And in this ACE report, they also said YouTube was the most popular platform all around watching videos. So the pornography industry knows this. And let's not forget what they're all about.
Exactly. And if you've seen The Social Dilemma, if you haven't, we really encourage that you do. It's a bit of a wake-up call. And if we think that it's only social media sites that use those algorithms to manipulate users, think again, because the leading tech platform on the planet is MindGeek, that owns all the porn sites. So they know how to get you hooked. They know that porn is addictive. On that note, just as we finish, I just want to play our new video that unpacks. It's only a minute long, but I think you'll love it, because really the research is in on the harms of porn. And then when you couple that with the impacts of the different types of devices, it's really important that we take a step back and consider how we are parenting kids through this generation. So let's have a look at this.
Boy, we need that on TV. I love it.
I know, it's great. I'm so happy with that video. We've so many people have seen it. So if you haven't seen it yet, go to the Youth Wellbeing Project Facebook page and please show it to everybody that you know. Grab our free download. We've put together that infographic in an awesome download for you. We do just really ask you to consider the impact of technology, of screens on the brain, on the development, on their levels of depression and anxiety. There's so much research in this space that is coming out, and this generation has been, in essence, guinea pigs in this. And one screen is not like the other. A smartphone is one of the most powerful tools that we have, and it can be absolutely fantastic. But if their brains aren't ready developmentally to handle that, we really encourage you, take pressure off yourself. The amount of parents that we've spoken to that said, I wish I hadn't have given in. Like, it would have been easy to do the battles, no, then deal with the fallout of this, of what's happened after they've got a device.
And they will still have a social life. My daughter has a flourishing social life, and they will still. And one of the reasons I'd really urge parents to delay is watching Childhood 2.0, which is the living experiment, and I would encourage you to watch that too. When one of the boys said, if at 11 you don't have a phone, you can be ostracized. I want that to change. I really want that to change.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, imagine if we can get this message out here now, and like in the next 3 to 4 years, people really start to take that up. Your kid who's 7 now won't have to have all that sort of pressure. Imagine if the norm could become, as they're nearing the end of high school, or even later for smartphones. We're going to do some investigating and find out. I know that Nokia had a phone that was, a dumb phone. Find your kid a dumb phone, please.
Yeah, America has one which I wish we had here, which is Gab, and I do wish somebody here would put something like that together. But the other thing is, if we all did take a stand, the tech companies would lose money and they'd have to rapidly do something differently. So
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. And I really think that gone are the days when, oh, look, my phone's out of date now. I'll just, update that and pass that on to my child. Gone are those days. We have to be more measured. I know that I did not understand the implications. As I said, I was one of the parents that came through on that first round, did not seriously understand the impacts. So, if you've got little kids, if you've got 10-year-olds, 12-year-olds hassling you for a phone, there's a really good word. No.
And I was one of the parents who did try her very hardest, and we still didn't avoid situations arising when they were outside of the home. So let's try to stand together. And as I said last week, be the winner parent.
Yeah, be the winner parent. And look, this is in absolute tribute to Colin Karchner, who we talked about last week. He was really strong on this. He had a really strong message. And I think he's really inspired us to get really clear with what we're saying about screen time and devices, to get really clear. You have to understand that the research is so profoundly significant on this. This is not just, we're being the tech Nazis, not at all. We want our kids to
get hungering at all.
Exactly. But, it would be remiss of us. It would be negligent of us to say, you know what, your kids will be fine. They've all got them and they're all navigating it through. Well, yeah, they've all got them. And we're seeing massive rises in depression and suicidal thoughts and anxiety, and something's got to change. So, take the pressure off yourself,
Exactly.
take the pressure off your kids.
And even if your own child doesn't end up suffering, my own son has had to call 000 3 times in his adolescent life on friends, and that effect has its own ripple. It's we just have to shift something, and we don't really have a lot of time. We really just have to all try our very best to take a stand.
Yeah. So we would love it if you would share this, get the word out. If you want to hear us talk on any topics, send us a message, and we'll do our best to not only bring a good message, but also create some resources to go along with that, and really rally alongside you and support the parent community, to support the school communities, to really start thinking about these issues differently. So we hope you found this awesome, and we will see you next time.
Good night.
If you're concerned about children and young people's safety and wellbeing related to porn harms, find answers with Youth Wellbeing Project. Families searching for answers will benefit from our children's books, blogs, Facebook community, and other resources. The IQ programs provide classroom curriculum to equip educators for the task of supporting kids and teens to author their own future, instead of leaving it up to the porn industry to be their educator. Whether you need face-to-face or online professional training and student presentations, classroom curriculum or resources for families to deal with the fallout of porn, our team are here and educating for tricky conversations.